Welcome everybody to your live market update and charts of the day for this Monday, the 28th of July. I hope you're well. I hope you had a great weekend and delighted to see you here as always. Before we get into it, of course, we've got to give you this important message just to remind you that this is for educational purposes only. Please make sure that, of course, that you do your own due diligence on anything you see or hear. Make sure that you follow trading plans and, of course, manage risk within your own personal trading objectives and financial situation. Let's just pop that important message up there just to, so it's there for all to see. Now, of course, what we're going to do is we're going to go into some headlines, and then, of course, we're going to go into some charts just to see if we can find a chart of the day or two. So let's kick things off by popping into the headline slide. Of course, markets continue to drive higher. The big news that's come across the wires is the US-EU deal on the table, suggested that a 15% across-the-board tariff will be imposed from any imports into the US. Of course, that's going to impact negatively on inflation, but is significantly better, of course, than the 30%, which was the 3/4 level. Of course, we are nearing August the 1st, which was that key date for copper. Of course, China talks are in focus next, and the Fed is likely to pause this week. If we look at the futures, they are positive today on that trade news. Asian markets, however, are mixed, with the Nikkei underperforming, but the ASX is up around about 0.4%, with European futures also pointing to a higher open. We'll look at charts in a moment because the US dollar index has remained in a downwards trend channel despite some end of the week recovery we saw. Somewhat surprisingly, gold retraced from last week's test of record highs, but copper has paused at record highs, just retaining its pre-August the 1st move to the upside when there's a 50% tariff imposed on copper imports into the US. Oil is the weaker of the commodities, performing pretty poorly last week, trading near the bottom of a range beneath the 200 MA. We'll again check out charts in a moment. Bitcoin moved higher and is continuing to do so today, is nearing 120,000 record. G'day to Lita and to Sonia. Welcome to you both. So earnings and trade news will continue to be important. It is a quiet start to the data week, so it's later in the week that we're going to see the major action. We've got the Aussie CPI on Wednesday. Wednesday's a very busy day. We've also got the start, essentially, of the three big jobs numbers coming out with the ADP report. GDP also due on Wednesday. It's a preliminary GDP, so it's one of the most important, as well, of course, as that Fed rate decision. We are expecting, of course, a pause, which is going to upset Trump. And just on earnings, we are seeing around about 80% of companies reported so far beating EPS and revenue expectations, which is really high, particularly the latter. But we shall see if that continues. It is relatively early doors this week, but so far so good in terms of earnings season. We're going to just pop into see what Asian markets are doing at this stage, and you can hopefully see it's a little bit of a delay. No, it's not playing ball again today, but as I said, we're seeing the ASX up 0.2% and the Nikkei underperforming. Let's go to some charts. And the chart that you see in front of you is NVIDIA, one of my favorites. We'll have a look at this in a couple of minutes in more detail. But just to reinforce the fact that big tech is outperforming, if we look at the NASDAQ as a whole, you can see that's rising, as is the S&P 500. There we go. We're grinding upwards. We breached this key level last week on the S&P 500 around about 6,300 and continue to move up there. If we look at what's happening in Asia today, you can see we had that gap up on the back of that trade news, and we're actually at the highs of the session so far. Let me just have a quick look. Yeah, we're seeing the Nasdaq up around about 0.6%. The Russell is around about the same. The Dow's lagging a little bit, about 0.4% to the upside, but everything looking pretty good at this stage. If we look at the US dollar, I did talk about this downward trend channel. It looked as though we were going to break out of it at this point here, move back into it at the early part of last week. These are these lows from early 2022 that are worth keeping an eye on. But as I said, we got a move up Thursday, Friday last week, and you can see slightly higher in trading today. Now the futures markets are open for the US dollar index. Gold, however, did pull back a little bit at the end of the week on that US dollar strength and a failure to breach that record high at 34.40. That's now 4 attempts at that, so that's becoming a really important level technically to keep an eye on. You can see there we've got some buying in Asia, potential double bottom formation actually on the short term chart, which might be worth keeping an eye on at 3,340. That is potentially important level. If we get a move above that, we might see certainly a move up around about $15 in the first instance, and then a continuation perhaps up towards that 3,365 level you can see on the chart. As I said, copper tackling record highs, just failed to hold on Thursday's move above that. Quite remarkable, really. Had a high of 595. This, of course, is in response to those tariffs. We have that pullback, failure to breach 548 with any conviction, and then that rally at the end of the previous week and early part of last week. Just again, a little pullback, not that surprising, but one wonders what might happen to copper subsequent to that August the 1st date where those tariffs are due to be imposed. Maybe the selling will kick in there because we've obviously got some buying continuing up until that date, it looks like from the chart. Oil, as I said, are trading within a fairly tight range. If we look at the USO USD CFD, then you can see there we're trading between around about 65.70 and 67.60 over the last week and a half, very much beneath that 200 MA. Just watch for a breach at some stage of that 65.68 level. That could be important. Possibly a move down to around about $63. Yeah, could be on the cards. That EIA data on Wednesday may be important in terms of oil price going forward. And Bitcoin continues to look chirpy as it did at the over the weekend, moved back up towards this 120,000 level. That looks important. Well worth keeping an eye on that during the course of the day. If we look here at the, if you like, the shorter term time frame, we'll just bring that out a little bit. You can see the importance of 120,000, possible move up to around about 120,600 in the first instance, but still certainly plenty of buyers in Bitcoin since the middle of last week are evident. Right, let's look at FX pairs in a little more detail. We start with the US yen. Interesting price action on this today. You can see now we're near the high of the session. 148 looks like a key level. You can see that was where we've had previous two fractals and then one back here on the 22nd. So a breach of 148 could be technically significant. This bar that we're in at the moment actually breached 148, got a couple of pips over that, but then failed to hold it. So this is looking increasingly important and looks like a fairly high probability trade. I'm not sure there's a lot in this, maybe 20 pips or so in the first instance. We may get a pause there at around about 148.20, but possible target of around about 148.60 if we get some momentum in this going forward. As for the GB pound USD, not quite as compelling. You, we are in a range here which we don't seem particularly enthused about moving above at this stage, following Thursday and Friday's USD strength. One to keep an eye on, nevertheless, of course. As for the Aussie, let's put the Aussie dollar USD on here, and you can see there, bounce off the 200 MA, but looks pretty choppy in there. Not a massive amount going on. So it looks as though the major opportunities maybe in the yen crosses. If we look at the Aussie yen, interesting price action today. We had a slight gap up and a continuation. And there's the level of interest at around about 97.24. If we put this on a longer time frame, you can see it's still relevant. And even on a daily time frame, we haven't been here since the early part of February. So a breach of 97.25 looks really, really technically important and one worth keeping on your radar. Potential move up in the short term to around about 98.18. That's around about 90 pips. So this, I think, is going to be my chart of the day. But just to be sure, let's have a look at perhaps the euro yen, which is showing again highs not seen for a long time. There's the breach we saw on the daily chart on Friday. A continuation of that today, 173.82. The difficulty with this, of course, is that we haven't seen these levels really since back here, all the way back in June last year. Keep an eye on that level at 174.23 if we do get continued buying. Um, I think that might be the level to keep an eye on. We've got a fractal here, um, which failed to breach that intraday. So that continuation of Friday's move looks on the card. So this would potentially be an alternative to the Aussie yen should we get a breach of 174.25, let's say. Right, on to the ASX. And let's have a quick look at the um, let's have a quick look at the futures, which seem to have appeared now. And there you can see those US futures looking really, really positive. European futures also looking higher. And you can see there it's the yen on the bottom row, it's the yen crosses that are struggling there to make any headway today. Now we've got some internet access. You can just see that the streaming service doesn't like the internet very much. But since we've got it, let's exploit it. So you can see here that we are off the highs on the ASX. Um, let's get rid of the pop-up book. And you can see there 125 to 66 out of the top 200 rising. So about double the number of advances versus decliners, which is positive. If we just look at the sector split, resources are underperforming along with energy and utilities. You can see that the somewhat defensive stocks in telecom and healthcare outperforming the market today. That's sort of interesting in terms of a sector split. Right, okay. And let's also just check out FactSet just to give you that extra bit of info in terms of earnings so far. So I'm hoping you can see this, but we've got 34% of the S&P 500 reported, 80% beating expected EPS, 80% beating revenue. As I said, that it's that latter number which is quite significant. Um, we have got a little bit of the earnings growth rate has dropped off a little bit. So this will be the lowest growth rate since Q1 last year, which is sort of interesting. But that is slightly lower than was anticipated beforehand. But if we get this continuation of companies beating EPS, even even if it is by a little, and a positive revenue surprise, that's going to bode well for market valuations. Just pop in factset.com and you should be able to find this. Um, could maybe even see if I can post this in. Right, okay, let's have a check out on some ASX stocks. I think it's probably the next port of call to see what is moving in those moving to encourage that slight uptick this morning. There we go. Right, okay, so let's look at a couple we've been looking at previously. Mesoblast looks really positive. We talked about this as it breached this key level last week. It continues to move higher. It's closed this gap here and would suggest that potentially there is a level at around about 255, which it played with at the end of last week, that is important. Possible move up to around about $3 and looks like a good medium or even a short term hold on Mesoblast. A new farm were also of interest. Let's just put some detail on this just so you can see it a bit more. There we go. So again, this is one we tracked last week. A move over that key level at 250. It's already shifted up to roundabout. It's trading at end of last week. It hit 273 as the high, so I would use that as possibly your yardstick to say that the buying is continuing. To date, we are slightly up. There's some profit taken on Friday. Let me just see if there's anything else that's catching eyes today. Maya looks interesting. A nice breach of potentially of a level at 65, or a nice level to keep an eye on. Not sure it'll get much past 70, but even that is pretty close to around about 7.5%. Worley were another one we were tracking, and we suggested we had a look at this a couple of weeks ago and suggested that maybe that 200 MA is worth having a little look on. Looks as though it's got a bit of work to do to get up there, but certainly possibly worth keeping on your radar for the end of the week. And 360 ASX, one of my favorite stocks, just continuing to pile drive higher. Record highs, of course. Once we breached this was a chart of the day. We gapped up and then away we go. We're now tackling 39 as the next key level of 40, being a round number. Um, I I wouldn't be surprised to see this stock up at 50. It just keeps on providing good reports that are backing up this move to the upside, and certainly one worth consideration. Tech space is not doing so bad, and one that I had a look at early on this morning was NXT, who are in the network cloud solutions space. 1460 is a level of interest. If we look historically back at where this could go, if we breach, maybe 1568 is a reasonable price target on this in the short term. And that, of course, would be around about a 7.3 move to the upside. So in terms of charts of the day for the ASX, I very much like NXT and, of course, 360 ASX. Um, very good. Thanks, Wayne, for the update. Okay, so let's just pop into the US and just have a look at a couple again that we've been tracking of late. Actually, let's just see what Zip are doing. Keep an eye on Zipco. We'd like to see a breach of 328. It's got some work to do to get up there, around about 13 cents shy of that. But undoubtedly the buyers are in on Zipco. Let's check out Tesla. Once again, we're seeing a bounce off the 200 MA and a bounce off $300. This higher low scenario, every time it pulls back, is technically interesting. Possible move up to once again to around about this 330 level. So we've got about 5% up from where we are now. It seems that every time it gets anywhere near 300, we get a bounce. Oh, don't forget next bar tomorrow, by the way, guys. Um, and then we've got Nvidia. This is where I start the day. This continues to power drive high, but you can see we've got a pause here at around about 173. Those US futures could suggest that we're going to get a move higher on Nvidia. Um, just very quickly, I'm going to check out earnings date for Nvidia. Is the 27th, sorry, the 27th of August. So you've got around about a month um, before Nvidia are due to report earnings. So if we do get a breach in that, then this could be one worth watching. Microsoft, another one of my favorites, have been banging on about for ages. Again, after it breached that 500 level, it's edged higher, pulled back, retested it, and now we look as though we're ready to go to the next level. Record highs on this stock, obviously, as you can see there, but undoubtedly one that continues to do well. Again, Microsoft must be due earnings very soon. We did have some big tech reporting last week. Google beat expectations. Um, just checking out the date for you. 30th of 30th of July, so possibly worth waiting until after earnings. Just a couple of others. The airlines we actually quite liked. United Airlines Holdings is stuck underneath this resistance at 92.90. Possible move up to $100 on that. So around about a 9% move to the upside. That's certainly worth looking at. And AMD, another one we've been tracking. We saw a trend continuation pattern. Every time this retraces, it seems as though it just attracts more buyers in. You can see it happened here and here and here and here. So those lower highs, sorry, those higher lows again are supporting this technically. And that move up to 166 suggests that maybe 200 is on the cards over the next few months. AMD have actually reported already, I think, but check that out for yourselves if you're interested in this stock. So there we go. That's it for today. I hope that's been um, useful for you. I hope it's given you some things to think about. And of course, as always, um, then hope you have a great week, and we shall catch you. Uh, there may be some alteration in some of the events this week. Just keep your eyes peeled for that. Just trying to tie down some timings for both the next live update and Inner Circle on Wednesday, which may have to change in terms of a date. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you very much to Rob and Wayne and Lita and Sonia. You guys take care. All of you have a good week ahead. We'll see you very soon again. Bye bye for now.